So it is September 12th. The water is starting to recede. We already started working on the Honda, getting a little bit of water out of that. So the Dodge is now low enough that I could take a look at the interior. Now I can't do anything with the back because that's still underwater. So got in there, taking care of a little bit of issue. So you can see here, here's the water line right there. And I'm not going to close the door because there's a power cord in there, but you can see the line on the door. So it looked like it may have been in the interior, but it turns out that it's got this huge step up from the bottom all the way up. So this side is completely dry, no issues there. Go around to the other side. So this side is a little bit worse because it's actually not on the driveway in the back. The front is on a block of wood, or I mean it's a paver, but so it's level at the front. You can see the water line. It's a bit lower on this door. So open this, and water line's here. So at first glance it looked okay, but turns out just a tiny bit of water seeped in. Just the edge right along here is a little bit damp, but not enough to be tearing out the whole interior, because I already did that on this truck about 2 years ago, so it was completely cleaned. So I just tie it up, leave the fan on it, we'll dry it out. I'll come back with a carpet cleaner and just clean that one little spot, put it back together. The interior will be good. Have to wait for the water to recede before we can do anything about the rear end. So September 13th on the Dodge, the water is receding. Yesterday it was up to about here, and now obviously it's gone. So I had this fan running most of the day yesterday, clearing out. The problem with this particular design is, you see how it's got this foam molded onto the back. This foam will hold tons of water. When I cleaned this thing, it took forever for this foam to dry out, but it seems to be mostly dry because, like I said, it only got a little bit damp. We're going to keep the fan on it for a while to get it as dry as humanly possible and air it out as much as possible, and then later I'll come back with a handheld carpet cleaner and we'll just give that bit of carpet a quick cleaning and it should be fine. There aren't any harnesses or anything here, and the seat belt buckle isn't one of those fancy ones that has the charge in it in case the airbags go off in a crash to pre-tension it. So yeah, that should be fine. It also didn't get wet, so yeah, no worries there. As far as the rear end goes, the axle was of course underwater for a fairly significant amount of time, so I'm not going to take care of that right this second because you can still see the water there, and I've got a bunch of other things to do. It should be fine for another day or two. But I am going to check the axle breather, because if the axle breather was high enough, there's a good chance that it didn't get water in it, provided the seals were good, which it doesn't leak, so hopefully they kept the water out, but we'll change it anyway. The U-joints also, let's see if I can get that. Yeah, the sun is making that hard, but the U-joints were actually just replaced, and they are greasable. So I'm not going to replace the U-joints or take them apart. I'm just going to add some grease to them, and that should force any water that may have gotten in and out. And I will probably check the transmission fluid, because it was at a point where I think the transmission tail housing may have been under the water, but we'll have to see. So I was looking at it a bit more closely. You can see the water line here runs along the door. It's hard to see here, but it was right up to about the bottom of this hub at one point. And I've been looking at the transmission, and it's actually pretty far up there. It looks like if it did get any water on it, it was only just a little bit at the back. So I'm probably just going to check the transmission fluid, keep an eye on it, and I probably won't drop the pan or anything. I might go ahead and just siphon whatever fluid is in the pan out, just to take a look and make sure it's not all milkshaky. But yeah, so the rear end's going to need some service. And then in the back here, luckily, since it's a truck bed, it there's not a whole lot back here to go wrong. See the line start right below the taillight, so I'll see if there's any connectors back there, but I don't think there are. And then I don't want to walk in the water because I don't have my boots on, but so the only thing really back here that may have been affected is the license plate lights, so I'll pull those. We'll spray the connections down with WD-40, and I think everything should be good here. And I don't know if I mentioned this before, but there's a reason this truck is so far down and never got moved. It's because the engine is missing. Yeah, the engine spun a rod bearing, so that's lovely. So this couldn't have moved even if I wanted it to. So I'm getting a closer look at the Dodge here, and up on the frame rail you can see right there, there's the water line, and I found the breather tube right here. This is for the rear axle, and it runs all the way up there, and see if I can get this on camera. This is it right here, this little cup, that's the breather tube for the axle. You can see the water mark right here. This is where the water level was. So it looks like just about 3 inches or so to spare. But I'm still going to change the axle fluid, and I'm going to go ahead and grease the U-joints. The reason being that it is still possible that water either leaked into the axle seals, or it could have gotten in through the breather if somebody came through on a boat or a truck and created a wake. So other than that, in the back here you can see the wires going up to the tail lights. These are not spliced anywhere in here. Those look like they are fine. There's this one wire here, which I believe is for trailers, and it is completely sealed up, so I'm not going to worry about that. The only thing I really need to worry about wiring wise at this end is the license plate lights and the trailer connector. I already opened up the cap and there is some moisture in there. I'll go ahead and pull these out and see if there's anything in there. Nope, that one seems to be dry. Take a look at the other one. Nope, there's some water in that one. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and spray those connections with WD-40, and later I'll clean them up a bit. But I'm not going to clean them up fully right now because I have to get ready to go. But yeah, other than that, and sticks and other debris that shouldn't be there being in the wrong places, I think it fared pretty well. So it's been a while now since I did anything on the Dodge, probably a little too long, but I had other things to do and I was pretty sure there wasn't any water in here. But I'm finally getting around to changing the fluid. I am going to change it anyway, even though I don't think there's any water in there, just to be safe, because I'd rather spend the money on changing the fluid than have the rear end possibly grenade and then leave me stranded, and then I have to get a new rear end, and you know, it'll get very expensive very quickly. So it's safer to just change the fluid. So I put that side up on some stands. It's not perfectly level. That side's probably a bit higher, but I'm okay with it because that side was lower during the flood, which means if any of these seals leaked, it was probably that side. But again, I don't think it actually did get any water in it. So all the bolts are out, and all it's holding is the RTV, because that's how it's sealed on these trucks. Just gonna pry it off and we're gonna see what's in there. Hopefully it'll cooperate with me, but most likely it will not. That's not good. Yeah, I was wrong. There's water in it. Well, the good news is that it's clean water. And there's the differential fluid. Yeah, I'm bummed. I was hoping there wasn't any water in it. So now what we'll do is we'll check all the, I'll pull this off, check all the gears. So the water is the bad news. The good news is, yeah, okay, I can live with that. The gears are the parts we'd really be concerned about, because if they got water in them, they could possibly rust and then seize up later down the line. But they don't appear to be rusty at all. I guess the coating of oil helped protect them, but we are going to have to wait quite a bit longer for this to drain, because it's going to need to drain out of both axle tubes and out of the pinion bearing. The pinion bearing shouldn't be too big of a deal since it's on an angle already, but yeah, I'm going to let it drain like this for a while, then we'll jack up one side, let it drain like that, then jack up the other side, let it drain like that, get it all out, put the new, seal it back up, put new fluid in it. It should be good. But yeah, so the water in there is not good news, but it looks like the bearings and the carrier and the gears should be all right. Well, you can tell by the fact that it's dark that it's been quite some time since I started recording earlier. And what I've been doing is I just let it drain for a couple hours. First, I let most of it drain just with it sitting level. And then one by one I jacked up each side and just let it drain like that, because I wanted to get as much gear oil and water out of the axle tubes as possible. This axle tube over here ended up having a lot more water in it than this one did. Now the good thing is that all the water that's coming out of here has been perfectly clear, not a hint of rust or dirt or anything in it. A lot of times when water gets into an axle, people won't change it right away, or they'll drive it a little bit, excuse me, and what happens is water doesn't really mix with oil, but if it gets churned around by like an axle or an engine, it'll get dispersed throughout the oil and it can come into direct contact with all the gears and everything, and then things start to rust and it turns into like a milkshake, and it can cause a whole lot of damage. Luckily this truck has not moved an inch since the flood, and so none of that has had a chance to occur. And I just hosed this all off with brake cleaner, and I've been looking for any signs of rust, because that's my primary concern here, is rust on the bearings or the gears or anything, any kind of pitting, which could cause a lot of problems down the road. And no matter how hard I look, I cannot find any. I have had this cover off before. About 2 years ago I changed the fluid and it was in great condition. It's still in great condition, but I'm not finding anything to do with water damage. Even the carrier bearings, no rust, no pitting, no nothing. So my theory at this point is that everything was still coated in gear oil, and so even though there was water in it, all the bearings and the gears had a protective layer of oil on them to keep them from coming in direct contact with the water and rusting. And I want to show you this too. This is the differential cover, which I have not cleaned yet, and you can see there's two lines on here, and what I'm thinking is that this line down here was the line it was at with just the gear oil before the flood. You see that's the fill plug right there, and because it's on angle, the gear oil was just a little bit higher than that. And then I think that second line is where it was at once the water was in there, so quite a bit of water, but luckily not too much. And I think the internals of the axle should be okay. The only way to really know for absolutely sure is to take the whole thing apart. I'm not going to do that because I just don't think it's worth it. Based on the condition of these gears, I'd say that the bearings are probably in great shape too. So what I'm going to do at this point is I'm going to seal this back up. I'm going to clean it up a little bit more. I'll seal the cover back up. I'm not going to be too careful about it. Just slap some RTV on there, slap it back on. And I'm going to just fill it with whatever I have on my shelf, whatever cheap oil I got, even if it's not the right weight. And then I'm going to spin the tires around a bit to get it dispersed over all the gears and bearings. Reason I'm going to do that is because there's no engine in this truck and I can't drive it. So I'll do that, And then once I do get the truck running again, I'm gonna just go ahead and drive for maybe 10-20 miles, stop, dump all the fluid back out, and put the proper fluid back in. And by that time, we should have been able to get all the water out, and I think it'll be all right. So I'm gonna go ahead and slap the cover back on, and I'll probably take this opportunity to grease up those U-joints a bit now too. So this is where I'm at. The diff cover is just kind of slapped back on there, sealed up just enough so that it doesn't leak. It's currently full of AEW 90 conventional gear oil. This truck specs 75 W140 synthetic, but since this fluid is just to get run around in there a little bit and make sure that there's no remaining moisture in there, I'm not going to go ahead and put expensive fluid in there just yet. So once I get a chance to run it around a little bit, then I'll dump the fluid that's in here and put the proper fluid in it. I did spend a lot of time making sure that the fluid got down into each axle tube so that it got onto the bearings on either end, and I spun all the components around many times to make sure that all the oil was well dispersed. Now as far as the electrical system goes, if I can move back here, so the only real things that there were to worry about is the map lights, the trailer connector right here, and then there is one connector on top of the differential which is for a speed sensor. Now all those connectors looked good except for the bulb in the map light over there. One leg of that bulb had actually rusted off, but that wasn't really a big deal. The bulb was burnt out anyway, so I just took it apart, cleaned everything out, put a new bulb in it, and I cleaned all the connectors and everything on the rest of these, and they all look good, so those should be fine. We'll move towards the front of the vehicle now. I did grease up both U-joints and I didn't see any water come out of them, so that's good. Now at the front, while I had the grease gun out, I decided to go ahead and pump some grease into the lower ball joints, just in case the water had gotten high enough to reach those, although I'm not quite sure it did. I can't really remember, to be honest. Now if we go inside here, the carpet is completely dry and it is all cleaned. I vacuumed it, cleaned it with a carpet cleaner, and put it all back together. So this is all done in here. And I think I'm going to go ahead and end it on that note. Reason being that I still don't have the engine ready to go back in this yet, and I'm not sure when I'm going to get it done and put back in. So rather than wait for that to happen and have this video span the course of a couple weeks to a few months, I'm just going to go ahead and end it here, and I will post an update when it's finally running again.